Du-ha Kim wiped his hands on his apron and looked at the small TV in his kitchen. The news was showing the same thing again, another failed meeting with the aliens. He shook his head and went back to chopping vegetables for the evening service at his restaurant in Seoul. 3 months had passed since the huge alien ships appeared over every major city on Earth. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council, but so far, all attempts to talk with them had gone badly. Earth's best diplomats and military leaders couldn't seem to make any progress. Du-ha's restaurant, the Garden Kitchen, stayed open through all of this. It was small but famous, known for mixing Korean food with dishes from around the world in new ways. Even with aliens in the sky, people still needed to eat, and his food made them feel better about the strange times they were living in. One rainy evening, something unusual happened. 2 tall figures in long robes walked into his restaurant. Du-ha's heart jumped when he saw their blue-tinted skin and large, dark eyes. They were aliens from the Galactic Council. "Welcome to the Garden Kitchen," Du-ha said calmly, though his hands were shaking. "Would you like a table?" The aliens looked at each other, then nodded. Du-ha led them to a quiet corner and gave them menus. He noticed they had translation devices on their wrists. "We have heard humans gather in these places to share food," one alien said. "We wish to understand this custom." Du-ha smiled. "Then let me cook for you. I'll make dishes that tell you about Earth and our people." For the next 2 hours, Du-ha served the aliens course after course. He gave them bibimbap with vegetables arranged like a garden. He made soup that steamed like morning fog over rice fields. He prepared fish caught that morning from the sea near Seoul. The aliens didn't just eat, they asked questions. They wanted to know why he chose each ingredient, what the cooking methods meant, and how people shared meals on Earth. Du-ha explained everything, from how families gather for dinner to how business deals happen over lunch. Word spread quickly. More aliens started coming to his restaurant. They sat with human customers, sharing tables and stories. The Garden Kitchen became a place where aliens and humans could talk without all the tension of official meetings. One morning, Du-ha found 2 important-looking people waiting at his door. One was from the United Nations, and the other was a Korean government official. "Mr. Kim," the UN representative said, "we've been watching what's happening at your restaurant. You've done more to help aliens understand humans than all our diplomats combined." Du-ha looked confused. "I just cook food and talk to my customers." "Exactly," the Korean official said. "And that's why we're here. The UN is trying something new. Instead of sending more diplomats or military officers, they want to send someone who can really connect with other species. They want to send you." "Me?" Du-ha almost dropped the keys he was holding. "But I'm just a chef." "That's exactly what we need," the UN representative said. "The aliens don't trust our weapons or our politics, but they trust your food. They trust the way you help them understand our culture through meals. We want you to be Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council." Du-ha looked around his small restaurant. Pictures of happy customers covered the walls. Herbs grew in pots by the windows. His whole life was here in this kitchen. But maybe, he thought, a bigger kitchen was waiting among the stars. "When do we start?" he asked. The officials smiled. Earth was about to try something that had never been done before in the history of the galaxy, sending a chef to represent an entire planet. No one knew it yet, but this decision would change everything. 6 months had passed since Du-ha first arrived at Unity Point, and Earth food had become the most popular thing in the galaxy. Du-ha watched from his office window as ships from different worlds arrived at the station's new Earth food market, bringing ingredients from their planets to trade. His former apprentice from Seoul, Chef Ha-jun Ba, had just arrived to help manage the growing demand. Ha-jun stood beside Du-ha, amazed by the sight of aliens lining up to buy Earth vegetables and spices. "I can't believe this," Ha-jun said, watching a group of floating crystal beings carefully selecting rice and seaweed. "When you left Earth, people thought sending a chef as an ambassador was strange. Now everyone wants to learn about our food. Duha smiled as he led Hejun through the market. Food tells the story of who we are better than any speech could. Look there. He pointed to a stall where Nerisong, a merchant from Earth, was teaching a group of aliens how to choose the best kimchi. Neri had started the first space trade route just for Earth ingredients, and now her stalls were everywhere on Unity Point. The secret, Neri was saying to her alien customers, is understanding that food isn't just about eating. It's about sharing culture and making memories. As they walked through the market, Duha and Hejun saw amazing things. Alien chefs were creating new dishes that mixed Earth ingredients with food from their own worlds. A water-breathing species had invented underwater kimchi. Plant-like aliens had found ways to grow Korean vegetables in zero gravity. But the most interesting thing, Duha said, stopping at a busy restaurant, is happening here. Inside, aliens from different species sat together, sharing meals and talking like old friends. The restaurant was one of 50 that Duha had helped open across the station. Each one served Earth food adapted for different species, but they all kept one important rule. Everyone ate together. When I first came here, Duha explained to Hejun, many species wouldn't even sit in the same room. Now they share meals every day. Food has become a bridge between worlds. Later that evening, Duha received an important message. The Galactic Council had approved his biggest project yet. They would help Earth open restaurants on every major space station in the galaxy. Each one would be a place where different species could meet, eat, and learn about each other. It's not just about the food anymore, Duha told Hejun as they started planning the new restaurants. Every time someone from another world tastes our food, they learn something about Earth. They learn that humans believe in sharing, in welcoming strangers, and in making peace through understanding. Hejun nodded, beginning to understand why his old teacher had been chosen as Earth's ambassador. You're not just selling food, he said. You're sharing Earth's heart with the galaxy. Duha looked out at the busy market, where beings from 100 different worlds were discovering the joy of Earth's food culture. Somewhere in the crowd, two species that had been enemies for centuries were sitting down to share a meal together. That's the real power of food, Duha said quietly. It doesn't just fill the stomach. It opens the heart. The peaceful horizon docked at Unity Point, the massive space station where the Galactic Council met. Duha stood at a window, looking at the huge structure. It looked like someone had built a city in space, with towers and domes of every size spreading out in all directions. Rayon Cho, Earth's only friend in the council, waited at the dock to meet them. She was human but had lived at Unity Point for 5 years as a cultural expert. Her face showed both excitement and worry as she greeted Duha. Welcome to Unity Point, Ambassador Kim, Rayon said, bowing slightly. I should warn you, many council members are not happy about Earth sending a chef as an ambassador. Duha nodded calmly. Then they haven't eaten my food yet. Rayon led them through grand hallways filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human, while others were so different that Duha couldn't tell which end was their head. Many of them stopped to stare at the group, whispering to each other. The small one must be their ambassador. Duha heard one tall, crystal-like being say, "How strange that they sent someone with no military rank or political power." "Humans are still primitive," another replied. "They don't understand proper diplomacy." Duha pretended not to hear them. Instead, he was noting what each species looked like, thinking about what kinds of food they might enjoy. Captain Jaiwan walked beside him, her hand near her weapon, but Duha touched her arm gently. "No need for that," he said. "My weapons are in the kitchen, and they're much more effective." They reached the main council chamber, a huge room with seats for hundreds of different species. Duha was supposed to give a speech introducing himself, but he had a different idea. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice clear in the quiet room. "I could stand here and talk about Earth's wishes for peace. Instead, I would like to invite all of you to dinner tomorrow night. Let me show you, through Earth's food, who we really are. Confused murmurs filled the room. This wasn't how things were usually done. Rayon looked nervous, but she translated his invitation into several alien languages. One large alien with scales like a fish stood up. "You expect us to eat your primitive food. This is not how galactic diplomacy works." Duha smiled. "How do you know it's primitive if you haven't tried it? Sometimes the simplest things can bring the greatest understanding." A smaller alien with feathers spoke next. "What if your food poisons us? How do we know this isn't a trick?" "That's why I spent the journey here studying all of your species' biology," Duha replied. "Every dish will be safe and specially prepared for each kind of guest. You have my word as a chef and as Earth's ambassador." Slowly, one by one, the council members began to accept his invitation. Even the scaled alien who had protested agreed to come, though he still looked doubtful. As they left the chamber, Rayon hurried beside Duha. "You took a big risk," she said. "If tomorrow's dinner goes wrong, it could damage Earth's reputation forever." Duha walked faster, already planning his menus. "Then we'll make sure it's the best dinner this galaxy has ever seen." Behind them, Captain J1 smiled. Maybe Earth had chosen the right kind of ambassador after all. A month after the dinner incident, Duha's kitchen on Unity Point had become the busiest place on the station. The attempted poisoning had actually made him more famous. Now, council members from all species wanted to learn about Earth's cooking. Today, Duha stood in front of a very unusual cooking class. In front of him were 12 aliens from different species, all wearing special aprons designed to fit their various body shapes. Even the scaled alien who had almost been poisoned was there, now one of Duha's strongest supporters. "The secret to good cooking isn't just about the ingredients," Duha explained, showing them how to hold Earth-style cooking knives. "It's about understanding why we cook. On Earth, preparing food for others is a way of showing we care about them." The aliens practiced cutting vegetables, each in their own way. Some used tentacles, others used claws, and a few had to use special tools Duha had designed for them. But they were all learning, and more importantly, they were working together. Ambassador Kim, a floating cloud-like being, asked, its voice sounding like soft wind chimes, "Why do humans spend so much time preparing food? Couldn't you just take nutrition pills like most advanced species?" Duha smiled as he helped another alien adjust its grip on a spoon. "We could, but then we would miss the joy of creating something special for others. When you cook for someone, you're giving them more than food. You're giving them your time and attention." As the class continued, Duha noticed something interesting. Species that usually avoided each other were starting to talk. They shared tips about cooking, laughed at their mistakes, and helped each other learn. The kitchen was becoming a place where old enemies could forget their differences. That evening, Rayon visited the kitchen with exciting news. "The council wants to make your cooking classes official," she said, watching as Duha cleaned up after the day's lessons. "They want to create a cultural exchange program, with you as the head teacher." Duha looked surprised. "Me? But I'm just teaching basic cooking." Rayon shook her head. "It's more than that. Your classes are the first time many species have worked together peacefully. The council thinks this could help prevent conflicts in the future." The next week, Duha organized something new. The first interspecies cooking competition. Teams had to include members from at least 3 different species working together. The prize wasn't important. The real goal was getting different species to cooperate. The competition day arrived, and Unity Point's main hall was filled with cooking stations. Teams of aliens worked together, creating dishes that had never existed before. Some combinations were strange, but everyone was trying their best. Duha walked between the stations, giving advice and encouragement. He saw a crystal being helping a water-breathing alien with temperature control. A group of usually shy plant creatures was teaching others about flavor combinations. Everywhere, species that once feared each other were now cooking side by side. At the end of the day, as everyone shared the meals they had created, Duha realized something important. He wasn't just teaching cooking anymore. He was teaching peace. And somehow, in this big galaxy full of different species, Earth's simple way of sharing food was changing how everyone thought about each other. 1 year after the mining crisis, Duha sat in the grand meeting hall of Unity Point, watching as Council Speaker Min Seo Park presented Earth's new diplomatic program to the entire Galactic Council. The huge room was packed with representatives from every known species in the galaxy. The success of Ambassador Kim's methods cannot be ignored, Min Seo announced, her voice clear and strong. Earth proposes that we make culinary diplomacy an official part of all peace negotiations. Trade Commissioner Tai Young Choi stood next to her, showing charts that tracked how conflicts had decreased wherever Earth's food diplomacy program had spread. The numbers told a clear story. Planets that participated in food exchange programs were 60% less likely to go to war. But how can we be sure this will work everywhere? Asked a representative from a distant star system. Earth's methods seem too simple for complex problems. Duha stood up to answer. After a year of success, he felt more confident speaking to the council. Simple things often work best, he said. When species cook together, they must trust each other. When they share meals, they must talk to each other. These simple acts build understanding without anyone realizing it. He waved his hand, and the room's displays showed images from across the galaxy. There were pictures of Earth-style kitchens on hundreds of space stations. Videos played of different species cooking together, sharing meals, and solving problems around dinner tables. Look at what happened in the Orient sector, Duha continued. 3 species that fought for centuries now run cooking schools together. Their children learn to cook each other's food before they learn to walk. This is how peace grows, one shared meal at a time. The council voted that day to create a new department, the Galactic Cultural Exchange through Cuisine. Every member world would send students to learn Earth's methods of food diplomacy. Duha would help design the training program. After the vote, Rayon found Duha in his kitchen, where he was teaching a group of young aliens from 20 different species. "You've changed how the entire galaxy thinks about diplomacy," she said, watching the students work together. "I just showed them what every good chef knows," Duha replied, helping a young mountain folk adjust the heat under their pot. "The best meals are the ones we cook together." That evening, Duha received news that made him smile. The Galactic Council had officially renamed their peacemaking process. They now called it the Kim Protocol, solving conflicts by bringing different species together to cook and share meals. "Did you ever think," Rayon asked, "when you were running your small restaurant in Seoul, that you would change the way an entire galaxy makes peace?" Duha looked around his kitchen, where tomorrow's leaders from across the stars were learning to understand each other through the simple act of cooking together. "No," he said softly, "but I always knew that good food had the power to bring people together. I just never knew how many different kinds of people there were to bring together." Earth had given the galaxy something no one expected, a recipe for peace that anyone could follow. Duha was woken in the middle of the night by an urgent message. 3 species in the Orient sector were about to start a war over mining rights. The Galactic Council had failed to solve the problem through regular diplomacy, and now they were asking for Earth's help. When Duha arrived at the emergency council meeting, he found a room full of angry representatives. The 3 species, the rock-like mountain folk, the gas-dwelling cloudweavers, and the crystal-based lightsingers, had been fighting over the same mineral-rich planets for centuries. They all need different minerals to survive, Rayon explained quietly to Duha, but they can't agree on how to share the mining zones. Traditional peace talks have failed 15 times. Duha listened as each side argued their case. The mountain folk needed deep minerals for their children to grow. The cloudweavers used crystal dust to maintain their floating cities. The lightsingers required special gems to power their communication networks. As the shouting got louder, Duha noticed something interesting. Each species processed their needed minerals differently. That gave him an idea. "Honored Council, Duha said, standing up. Instead of another peace conference, I propose something new. A cooking competition. The room went quiet. Even Rayon looked confused. Each team must have members from all three species. Duha continued. Your challenge will be to create new ways to process and share your minerals, working together like ingredients in a recipe. The winning team's solution will become the new mining agreement. This is ridiculous, a mountain folk leader rumbled. Our survival isn't a game. No, it isn't, Duha agreed. But cooking together might help you understand each other's needs better than arguing has. After much debate, the three species agreed to try Duha's idea. Each side sent their best scientists and resource managers to Unity Point's main kitchen laboratory. Duha divided them into mixed teams, each with members from all three species. For 3 days, the teams worked together, combining their knowledge of mineral processing. At first, there were many arguments and mistakes, but slowly, something amazing happened. The species began to learn from each other. A mountain folk discovered that cloudweaver processing methods could make minerals last longer. A lightsinger found a way to use mountain folk mining waste to power their networks. The cloudweavers showed how their floating technology could help transport minerals more efficiently. On the final day, each team presented their solution. But the real victory wasn't in the competition results. It was in what the species had learned about working together. They had found ways to share resources that none of them had thought of before. The winning team's plan was special because it helped all three species. They had created a system where each group's mining and processing methods helped the others. What one species saw as waste, another could use as a resource. As Duha watched the former enemies sign their new mining agreement, he smiled. Once again, the simple act of working together in a kitchen had helped solve a problem that weapons and arguments couldn't fix. Sometimes, he told Rayon, the best way to share a meal is to cook it together. Duha stood in the massive hangar, staring at the spaceship that would be his new home. The Peaceful Horizon wasn't the biggest ship in Earth's new fleet, but it was definitely the most unusual. Instead of weapons, it carried the most advanced kitchen ever built by humans. Captain Ji-1 Park walked up to Duha, her footsteps echoing in the huge space. Ambassador Kim, are you ready to see your kitchen? Duha still wasn't used to being called ambassador. He nodded and followed the captain into the ship. As they walked through the clean, white corridors, First Officer Kai Lee joined them, carrying a tablet with the ship's plans. We built it exactly as you asked, Kai said, opening a large door. Though some of us still don't understand why an ambassador needs so many pots and pans. Duha's eyes widened as he stepped into the space. The kitchen was beautiful. Shining metal surfaces stretched from wall to wall. There were cooking stations for every type of food he could imagine, and some he had helped design specially for alien guests. This is the first molecular gastronomy lab ever built for space travel, Captain Ji-1 explained. The gravity controls can be adjusted for different cooking methods. You can even make soup in zero gravity. Duha touched the smooth countertops. All his old kitchen tools from the garden kitchen had been carefully packed and brought aboard. They looked small next to the new high-tech equipment, but he was glad to have them. They felt like old friends. When do the other ambassadors arrive? Duha asked, organizing his knives the way he liked them. Captain Ji-1 and Kai looked at each other uncomfortably. There are no other ambassadors, Ji-1 said. Just you. Duha stopped what he was doing. What do you mean? Surely Earth is sending more people. You'll have a full support team, Kai explained quickly. But you're Earth's only official ambassador to the Galactic Council. The UN thinks sending one person, especially someone like you, will show we come in peace. Duha sat down heavily on a nearby stool. The weight of his responsibility suddenly felt very real. He wasn't just representing his restaurant anymore, or even his country. He was representing all of humanity. That night, as the crew made final preparations for launch, Duha couldn't sleep. He walked to the kitchen and started cooking. It was what he always did when he was worried. The familiar motions of chopping vegetables and stirring pots helped him think. The ship's night crew smelled the food and wandered in. Soon, Duha was serving late-night bowls of ramen to engineers and security officers. As they ate and talked, he realized something important. No matter how far from Earth they traveled, food would always bring people together. Early the next morning, the peaceful horizon took off. Duha watched through a window as Earth grew smaller below them. His small restaurant in Seoul was down there somewhere, but ahead of him was the biggest challenge of his life. Ambassador Kim, Captain Jaewon called from the bridge. "We're receiving a message from the Galactic Council station. They want to know what kind of weapons our ambassador is bringing." Duha smiled and held up his favorite cooking knife. "Tell them I only bring the tools of my trade," and an open invitation to dinner. The captain laughed as she relayed the message. The journey had begun, and Earth's chef-turned-ambassador was ready to show the galaxy a new way of making peace, one meal at a time. The kitchen on Unity Point buzzed with activity as Duha and his team prepared for the diplomatic dinner. He had spent hours making sure every dish would be perfect for each species. Trade Minister Sun Woo-han watched from the doorway, amazed by the variety of foods being prepared. "I've never seen anything like this," Sun Woo said, looking at the colorful dishes. Some glowed softly, while others changed colors as they cooled. "How did you learn to cook for so many different species so quickly?" Duha carefully arranged blue crystals that looked like sugar, but were actually a special mineral that crystal-like aliens needed in their food. "I studied their biology files on the journey here. Cooking is just chemistry that tastes good." Security Chief Mai Ru Kang walked through the kitchen, checking every corner with her team. "The dinner starts in 1 hour, Ambassador Kim. Are you sure you don't want armed guards in the room?" Duha shook his head as he stirred a pot of soup that seemed to glow like starlight. "No weapons at my table. Food brings peace, not fear." The dining room filled with council members from 30 different species. Duha had arranged the seating so that species who usually avoided each other had to sit together. It was a risky move, but he believed sharing a meal could help them understand each other better. The first few courses went perfectly. Even the scaled alien who had doubted Duha seemed to enjoy his special dish of mineral-enriched seafood. The room filled with conversation as different species discovered they could enjoy food together. Then everything went wrong. Duha was serving the main course when he noticed something strange about the crystal garnish on one plate. The blue crystals were slightly darker than the ones he had prepared. His years of kitchen experience told him something wasn't right. Just as the scaled alien was about to eat from that plate, Duha knocked it away. The plate crashed to the floor, and the room went silent. "How dare you?" The scaled alien stood up, angry. "Is this how Earth treats its guests?" "Those crystals were poisoned," Duha said calmly, picking up one of the darker pieces. "Someone changed them when we weren't looking. These aren't the ones I prepared." Security Chief Myru rushed forward with her scanner. "He's right. These crystals contain a deadly toxin for your species." The room erupted in chaos. Some council members accused others of trying to start a war. Guards ran in with weapons drawn. It seemed like all of Duha's work to build trust was falling apart. Then Duha did something unexpected. He walked to the middle of the room and started cooking. He pulled out a portable stove and began preparing a special tea, using ingredients from his own kitchen that he knew were safe. The smell filled the room, calm and sweet. "In my restaurant on Earth," he said as he worked, "when things get tense, we sit down and share tea. Let's find out who did this together, as people who choose to trust each other rather than fight." Slowly, the shouting stopped. The weapons were lowered. Council members watched as Duha served each of them tea in cups designed for their different ways of drinking. As they drank together, Security Chief Myru and her team began their investigation. But something important had changed. The Council had seen that Earth's unarmed ambassador could handle a crisis with wisdom instead of weapons. and they had learned that sometimes the simple act of sharing a peaceful drink could prevent a war. 5 years after Earth first sent a chef as their ambassador, Duha stood in the grand opening ceremony of the Interstellar Culinary Academy. The huge building floated in space near Unity Point, its windows showing views of stars and nearby planets. The academy looked like a giant kitchen made of glass and steel, with room for students from every corner of the galaxy. When I first left my small restaurant in Seoul, Duha said to the crowd gathered for the opening, "I never imagined this. I just wanted to share Earth's food with our new galactic neighbors." The academy was bigger than anything Duha had dreamed of. It had kitchens designed for every known species, laboratories for creating new kinds of food, and most importantly, spaces where different species could eat together. But it was more than just a cooking school. It was Earth's gift to the galaxy. Hajun, now the Academy's head teacher, walked with Duha through the crowded halls after the ceremony. "Remember when people thought sending a chef as an ambassador was a mistake?" Hajun asked, watching students from 100 different worlds practice their cooking skills. Duha smiled as he stopped to help a young alien adjust their cooking technique. Sometimes the best answers are the simple ones. Earth didn't need to show the galaxy our weapons or our technology. We just needed to share our way of bringing people together. The Academy had become the center of galactic diplomacy. Before any important meeting or peace talk, representatives from different worlds would cook and eat together. The Kim Protocol, as everyone now called it, had become the standard way of starting diplomatic relationships. Rayon joined them, carrying news from Earth. "They're opening similar academies on 50 more stations," she said excitedly. "Earth has become the cultural center of the galaxy. Everyone wants to learn our way of making peace." Duha watched as a group of students worked together in one of the teaching kitchens. A young mountain folk was showing others how to cook with mineral spices. Next to them, a cloud weaver taught techniques for preparing food in zero gravity. A human student shared secrets of making the perfect rice. "But the best part," Duha said quietly, "is that it's not just about Earth's food anymore. Every species brings their own recipes, their own ways of cooking. We're creating something new together." That evening, Duha walked to his favorite spot on the Academy's observation deck. He could see Unity Point glowing in the distance, its restaurants and markets full of life. Earth ships arrived regularly now, bringing ingredients and students eager to learn the art of culinary diplomacy. "You've created something remarkable," Captain Jaiwan said, joining him at the window. She was now the head of Earth's diplomatic fleet, but she still visited often. "You taught the galaxy that true strength doesn't come from weapons or power." Duha nodded, watching the stars. "It comes from being willing to share your table with strangers and treating them like family." In the years that followed, historians would write that the galaxy changed forever when Earth sent an unarmed ambassador. But Duha knew the truth. It wasn't about being unarmed. It was about offering friendship in the most basic, human way possible, through the simple act of sharing a meal.